Ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher, and today we're going to tackle a subject that's a little bit difficult. So I kind of want to put it out there because it is going to have some negativity to it, and I don't want to produce any negative WoW videos right now because I truly believe that the game is about to turn a corner with Blizzard making a number of decisions which seem to be, at least on the face of it, from what we've seen from early ideas that are coming out, are designed to make BFA considerably better, and I am in that camp. I think they're trying to make it work. I think they've seen the error of their ways and trying to do something about it. However, the topic of gear is now raising its head more than ever, and it's kind of unavoidable to discuss it because it's affecting every area of the game once again. And it's tough because it's bound to upset people. I don't want to upset people. It's not why I do my job. I kind of want to leave you with a smile on your face. But together, without talking about it, we don't get discussion going. We don't get debate going. We don't get any sort of feedback really pumping into things. So what is the situation that's more apparent now than ever? Well, with the transition from Uldir to Battle for Dazara Law, plenty of people from every area of the game realized more than ever that there is in fact no point right now in the way the game is done to play the game after you've hit your goals, like, at all. In terms of individual character progression, it's utterly pointless, and specifically in terms of gear. So this isn't a mythic problem. I don't want you to think we're sat atop the ivory tower talking about this. That is not the case. This is a problem that's affecting both heroic people who only want to clear raids, say, on heroic or normal, or want to hit something like a mythic 10 or a keystone master, something along those lines where your goals are set and you aim to do your goal. But what we've seen more now is that when a new tier comes, and this almost comes down to this idea that WoW has become seasonal, is that when the new season hits, if you bothered to farm, let's say you cleared Uldir on Heroic, that was your goal, and then you continue to farm Heroic Uldir in order to gear yourself up for the next tier of content. This is the atypical way that most people have played World of Warcraft since its inception, is you aim to clear the latest and greatest content, you work through that, you progress through that, you have a good time, and then once that's done, then you continue to progress your character in a number of different ways wherever possible until the next content comes so that you're prepared, you're ready, you're able to step into there and not be at a disadvantage. Unfortunately, with the way the gearing system is now in World of Warcraft, that is rendered obsolete because you replace literally everything. Even if you farmed your ass off week after week, even got some wonderful Titan Forges, good gem slots, things like that, you immediately replace most of that gear within 7 to 10 days, no matter what your gear level was. It doesn't matter if you're one of the highest mythic raiders going, that gear is instantly obsolete. Everything from craftables to access to Mythic Plus dungeons, and of course the inevitable full reset of gears that's coming from the new raid in and of itself. Plus you mix in Warfronts with that, you mix in the updated World Quest with that. All these sources of very high level, very desirable items that are instantaneously accessible when a new season starts with the release generally of a brand new raid means that there's really no point in playing once you've hit your goals. And so this fosters a community mentality which is being hit with me a lot. This is why I'm making the video, because a lot of people are like, I've killed Jaina Heroic. I have no intention of going into Mythic because the gulf between Heroic and Mythic is now so obscene in so many ways that I would have to literally quadruple my playtime, quadruple my gold, because it costs Mythic Raiders on progression something around 10,000 gold a night in order to actually take part in that process. And I don't have to do any of that in order to do Heroic. In fact, Heroic is puggable. So we are talking about puggable content jumping all the way to the extreme instantaneously that people just aren't prepared to do. And they now know, because they just did the exact same things. Like, is there any point in me playing once I've done this goal? And if that is your only goal, is to clear a certain piece of content, if you're interested in PvE or something like that, then the answer, unfortunately, is no. There is really no point. Now, it's a little bit in the air at the moment because we are getting a new raid shortly, but it is only a 2-boss raid, so we really are talking about after that dies. And we have seen that Blizzard have once again had to go back, and we've seen this in the past as well, and they've had to buff the loot drops that come from there. They've had to buff them up because it's completely undesirable to ever return to that place. And this clearly is demonstrating to me that Blizzard is very aware of the situation they have created in order to cater to a lot of people who were desperate to get their hands on high-level gear and felt left out. They felt unfairly treated in terms of accessibility to content because of gear. And once they were behind the curve and they blamed it on no-lifers and things like that, and like, there's no way I can catch up to this item level, right? There's so much of the casual player base is so intently focused on item level that Blizzard relented and gave access to very high item level gear for nearly no effort whatsoever. And this has resulted in the exact and only conclusion that could have happened to this. There was no other way this was going to go, is that the community responded in saying, well, gear doesn't mean anything anymore. And we've talked about this, and you guys have seen this. The most clear and prevalent example would, of course, be Raided.io, is that the players just went, okay, so Blizzard's give you all loads of gear. You're still shit. And this is what it inevitably comes down to, is a lot of players are still really shit. No amount of gear is going to teach people to dispel. And I jumped into LFR tonight, and hello to the guys who recognized me there, like, why the hell are you in LFR? And it was just to sort of remind myself how much I despair at healers that cannot dispel, at DPS who are pulling like 4k, even at this gear level, while actually trying. And this is the fallacy a lot of people tell themselves is, well, those guys aren't trying, they're in LFR. No, these guys are trying. I watch them, I observe them, I pay attention to them. These guys are trying. They just have absolutely no idea what they're doing, and it's pointless giving these guys RPGs and missile launchers and all this advanced tech and weaponry because they have no idea how to use it. They haven't got the basic instruction manual, and what's happening is that more than ever, even though it has always existed, is we're seeing people with extremely high item levels and unable to access content where they can't even get upgrades. They can't get upgrades from there, and inevitably it's taken away that soft cushion that many of those players had. So I reiterate here, these players have always existed. It doesn't matter how many resources we have available in order to help players get better. It was something I learned very early on when making guides, is I can't force information on people because most people don't want it. They don't believe it. They feel you're being elitist. They feel you're being mocking to them or condescending to them. And so it was better for me to just put the guides out there and just let them find a home for people who are ready to accept that maybe they're not the best players in the world. And of course, the natural, and I'm sure you've all heard this, and probably most of you have said this at some point yourself when you weren't doing particularly well and you were being excluded and things like that, is that the problem is gear. The problem is gear. If I had higher item level, if I had this and that, and when we did the Legion Fresh Account series, we talked about this golden key, the idea that if I reached X amount of stuff, and this is the mentality that the game actually fosters in and of itself. The game does present that the reason you're not getting access and not being able to do things is because of item level. So in BFA more than ever, they gave item level to everybody. And the community did the only inevitable answer to that situation. We need a better metric. We need a better way of looking at people. Lower and lower guilds are considering Warcraft logs now. They're taking logs into account when recruiting people, even at a very basic level, because gear is so radically untrustworthy. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. And now part of the upset is coming that people can no longer blame gear. And it's a nice safety net. It's in fact something we discussed during Warlords of Draenor when PvP gear was neutralized. The after effect of that was people realized very, very quickly that it wasn't gear holding them back in those areas. And the people with the same gear they had pretty much were smashing them into the ground still. And no longer was it a case of, well, I'm under-geared, I want to get that gear. And it's almost a temptation, making that carry. It's like, I wish I had that guy's gear so I could smash people into the floor. And then gear is relatively normalized, and suddenly that's not the case anymore. In fact, you're still getting smashed into the ground. It's because you yet to still do not have the ability to play. And that's 99% of your output comes from that. Like, if you don't know how to utilize the gear you have, and also playing the content where you're not going to be killed, that you're able to maximize your damage and do things like that. If you don't know how to do those things, then it doesn't matter how much gear you've got, you're always going to lose. I don't blame the community for coming up with alternatives. It was the only way this was going to go, is if you give everybody something, then we have to discount that thing because everybody has it. So it's no way to gauge players. I have to wonder, is this the utopia that the guys who sought out gear from any possible source and really, really rallied Blizzard, because we all saw it happen where they were, so many players were arguing and fighting tooth and nail to say it's unfair that this game is not just about raiding, it's not just about Mythic Plus, it's not just about PvP. You need to be organizing the casual player base into ways that they can progress their character, which was the phrase used more than ever. While I'm pretty sure I wasn't the only one, based on my audience reaction to the videos I made at the time, is like, this is not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. This is really not going to help you. It's going to end badly. Believe us, this is not what you want. And the inevitable side effect of this is something else has happened that we also brought up, is that a lot of the casual player base are now having access to very high level gear, which is of heroic raid and in some cases mythic raid equivalent. Not overall, no one's suggesting in any way, shape or form that it's easier to gear outside of doing the harder content, but you can get pretty damn close. Let's be honest, that is the case. And they're also realizing that it's completely useless to them. It doesn't change their gaming experience at all like they probably thought it would. One, they're still being denied access to content that they feel they should be able to do, despite having not learned to do that content. But also, the open world content and whatever other casual sources of entertainment you find in the game haven't actually got that much easier. They just go up to a certain point, and after that, it's trivial regardless of how much gear you have. We talked about this during Uldir, where it was very apparent that my characters, certainly my raid geared characters, my high level geared characters, had simply become complete genocidal maniacs when it comes to the open world. I just walk through camps of places, just massacring everything, and guess what? It's not that fun. And more of the casual player base are finding that as well. They're very overgeared, and they're just not having the fun they thought they would have with a lot of gear. The side effect of it now driving further players away means that this has had a negative hold, in my opinion, at both ends of the spectrum. Not only do you have guilds that are fully committed to the game and are doing things like Mythic Jaina Proudmoore, but also then asking themselves, okay, we killed Mythic Jaina Proudmoore. Is there any reason for us to farm gear and keep playing the game until the Ashara raid comes out? Well, we've got a new mini raid coming. We can do some preparation for that. It's coming out short term. But there's going to be months of time between that and the Ashara raid. Months of time where essentially everything we do week on week, we're just doing out of the goodness of our hearts and playing with people. And I'm sure that the inevitable comment that people will make here is like, well, don't you just find it fun? I find farm raids, and many other people find farm raids for two purposes. One is to prepare for the next content and to play with the guys that I enjoy in my guild. Now, if you take one of those two away, which is I don't need to do this to prepare for the next tier's content because I can craft multiple things, I can just gear up within a week or so, I get a week where normal and heroic's available to grab a load of gear very, very quickly and be either on par or ahead of where I would have been if I had farmed for months and months, then all we're left with is playing with the guys from the guild. And the sad truth is this: I don't need World of Warcraft to do that. Like, the guys play multiple multiplayer games. There is no reason for me to have to play World of Warcraft to achieve that. Sure, there are some players who only play World of Warcraft. That's a granted. But many players don't. Many, many more players don't now that they have no reason to farm. And it's truly quite sad. If someone would have said to me 4 years ago that at one point you're going to be making a video, Mike, where clearing the raid each week and working the way up is going to be a complete waste of your time, then I would have called you completely nuts. I would have said that is crazy. Well, of course, we're preparing for the next raid. Like, farm raiding is a meaningful thing to do. I don't particularly enjoy it, but I know it as a means to an end. That means to an end is now gone for many players. And as I reiterate here, it's not just players who are doing Mythic Plus. It's not just players who are doing Mythic raiding. This is not a problem for the high end. Plenty of people in the middle whose goal it is to clear normal or to clear heroic or whatever their challenge is are also finding that issue because let's put it this way, you can quite easily clear normal if that's what you're happy with. It's nice, it's relaxing, it's fun. And then there's not much left after that for you. There's some story stuff every now and again. But basically you're back down to World Quest and Island Expeditions each time. Then those guys can say, I can just stop playing now and I can come back later and it's fine. Now, I'm sure some of you say it's been this way for a long time. And you're right. I just think that BOD and the full reset of gear, where it even came to the point this time around where this precious, precious Azerite armor that Blizzard have been selling to us for quite some time, the stuff that we got from basic world quests was in fact better than the stuff that we had got from Mythic Uldir, simply because of the way the extra rings worked. That was the nature of the beast. So you're looking at taking giant item level downgrades simply because they're obviously better. There's no other way of looking at it. It's obviously not been worthwhile to farm and collect this Azerite armor. And you mix into that because a lot of people are saying, well, you know, don't you enjoy raiding? Yes, but I'm not going to play Mario 1-1 repeatedly, despite the fact that I enjoy Mario 1-1. I'm not going to play over and over and over and over again, knowing that it serves no real purpose. This is a genuine issue. It's a real, genuine issue that comes from a number of factors. This is not a seasonal game, and it's something Blizzard needs to pay attention to. This is not Diablo, where you can modify a few things, throw some twists in, give some new abilities and spells. Certainly that's in a sandbox environment where if things go completely crazy, it ain't that bad. This is a persistent, ongoing world day by day. And the idea of having more and more people just log in for the new season of content, then log out and come back in 6-7 months' time, that is not acceptable for a persistent world. That's not good at all. That's not, you're still accepting money on a month-by-month basis. So what is the idea here? What's the end goal of this? And for me, this really needs to change very, very soon. Very, very soon. So I agree with the people contacting me saying, I've done everything from Mythic Jaina and I've done this. It's like, do you think it's worth playing, or should I hang on? Like, I kind of want to do Crucible, but after that, am I just going to, like, farm gear that I'm going to replace in a couple of days when the new season comes? Like, what's the point? What am I trying to do with it? I've already killed everything that I want to kill. So what am I playing for? It's a legitimate question. It's a totally legitimate question. The solutions are obvious, is that gear needs to last fucking way longer when the new tier comes. The gear that you've spent this time farming needs to be relevant for longer than a reset when the actual new tier comes out. That's exactly how it used to work, and that's why it worked. I did not expect at any point, if I was certainly on a mythic geared character, that I would replace everything I have within a week. That is not a case that I have ever experienced before. Regardless of anybody's opinion on this, you're flat out wrong. Even in Argus, I never expected that. It took a while to build up appropriate tier sets. Certainly to get the ones I wanted, to get certain trinkets, to get certain all this. Now, realistically, my best trinkets, more than likely, unless Blizzard does something pretty dramatic, which they are trying in the Crucible, and I will always give them credit for that, is that likelihood is the best trinkets I will want when the new Ashara raid comes are in Mythic Plus dungeons, and there's also a very high likelihood I already have them. I just don't have them in the new fancy item level that comes with it. And a lot of people are also questioning the interest levels of saying the trinkets that were in the game at the launch, those are going to be the best trinkets throughout the entire game, and they're not that interesting to start with. The same with braces, armor, and all these kind of things. And as I said, they are trying to address that in Crucible, but it's clearly a system that's having consequences everywhere from the top all the way down to the bottom. In fact, the only people who are benefiting from this system are the guys who probably just gear through things like LFR. And that's it, because in those dungeons, week on week, you're getting a very tiny chance at gear because you've drastically limited your options, despite all the options being available, and hoping maybe that the Darkshore Warfront will give you something worthwhile. And on top of that, that maybe Ivus will give you something, and you can have a reasonably set of 400 gear, which I still remind you, it's only 15 levels below Mythic Raiders and the guys who are very lucky with Mythic Plus caches, because you can't even get that gear from Mythic Plus. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. Equivalent to a Mythic Plus 10 is what we're looking at there. Those are the only guys really benefiting it because they've stilted their choices. Anybody who has access to even doing a basic Mythic Plus week on week, or even a normal or heroic raid, is not facing that level of problem. In fact, they're getting as much gear as they can possibly hold very, very quickly. I'd love to see your thoughts on this and how you feel about it. It's tricky because it's hard to close Pandora's box. It's very hard to close Pandora's box. It's not a case of Blizzard just needs to dramatically reduce the amount of loot that is gained in the game. Very hard to go back on a system that has now been ingrained in so many people, despite the fact it probably is very beneficial. And it's not really benefiting everybody. And we kind of run into this catch-22 situation where, if we're being honest, this is not good for anybody. It's not good for the top, it's not good for the bottom. But if you take it away, those people will still be mad. Although it is obviously eating into their enjoyment of the game. That doesn't make it easy for Blizzard, does it? Look forward to hearing your thoughts, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.